Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you watching. I would encourage you to smash that like button, hit subscribe because we got more content. No, not really. I think that is one video uploaded, but I will try to upload videos like maybe once a week if we're missing small group. So again, appreciate you being here. One announcement that I have for you, and the announcement is everything's canceled. Yeah, I think you probably knew that already. So when there's no school, we don't have stuff at the church. If you go back to school, but there's still stuff going on, we'll take that under advisement. But for now, no small group, no youth group, no dodgeball. Now, you may have noticed that there's something different about me. Well, it's a haircut. I got a new haircut. Thanks for noticing. I appreciate that. I encourage you, grab a Bible so that you can follow along. If you don't have one, should be one on a phone or on the computer. We're in John chapter 11. So go ahead and grab it. You can pause this, whatever you need to do, but I'd like you to follow along. John chapter 11, we're going to start in verse 17. Life's pretty crazy right now, huh? I've never lived through something like this before, so it's hard to even know what to expect. In times like this, there can be a lot of anxiety, fear going on, and we just don't know what the future holds. We could be filled with worries, and some of them, like right now, this is kind of a big deal. So we can have big fears, we can have small fears. Just between us, wanted to let you know I was a little afraid to show this bad boy off in public with my new mustache. Oh, that's new too. Mustache. Yeah, I was afraid because I think, man, that guy looks like a cartoon character. And, fear that people would make fun of me. I know it's a small fear. There are all kinds of fears out there that we could have, but we shouldn't really live in fear. So we have those small things. We're dealing with kind of a bigger thing right now. One of the biggest fears that people have surrounds death, afraid of dying. And so we're going to talk about that today in our lesson in John chapter 11. What gets us through times of anxiety, times of fear and uncertainty? Well, I believe that our belief in God's going to do that, the promises that He has. And so I would encourage you as we dig in to really find rest in who God is and what He's promised. So John chapter 11, and this is a new series that we're starting. The series is about miracles. Miracles, things that Jesus did that, man, just shouldn't have happened, couldn't really be explained naturally because it was His supernatural power at work. So in this context, we're going to learn about Jesus' friend Lazarus. And Jesus' friend Lazarus got sick and he died. Jesus arrives 4 days later to be with Lazarus' family, his sisters Mary and Martha. So John chapter 11, we're going to start in verse 17. When Jesus arrived at Bethany, He was told that Lazarus had already been in the grave for 4 days. Bethany was only a few miles down the road from Jerusalem, and many of the people had come to console Martha and Mary in their loss. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet Him, but Mary stayed in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know God will give you whatever you ask." So here in the days following Lazarus' sickness, Jesus arrives, and by that time Lazarus had already been dead for 4 days, and He's coming to comfort Lazarus' family. And one thing we have to kind of know about that Jews do this whole thing differently than we do. For example, we embalm people, Jews don't. We tend to do this hey, we'll have a service, go home. Jews don't do it that way. One of the things that Jews have done for ages is a thing called sitting Shiva. And this is done over the course of days and even weeks where people come and spend time with the family to mourn over the loss of their loved one. And what's important about that time period is for the first 3 days, their view is that that person's spirit who had died, that person's spirit is still hanging around. So to this day, they'll cover up mirrors so that the spirit does not see himself and want to hang around. Hopefully they see the people gathered there mourning, and that brings closure to the dead spirit and encourages them to kind of move on. And so after those 3 days, the spirit leaves. Notice Jesus is intentional. He shows up on day number 4. Day number 4, and he shows up to have a spiritual conversation to provide hope and meaning. And she said, and one of the sisters said, if you had been here sooner, my brother would not have died. Jesus steps in to say, your brother is going to rise again. Let's pick it up in verse 23. Jesus told her, your brother will rise again. Yes, Martha, he will rise when everyone else rises at the last day. Jesus told her, these key verses right here. Jesus told her, verse 25, I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live, even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never, ever die. Do you believe this, Martha? Verse 27, yes, Lord, she told him, I've always believed you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who has come into the world from God. This whole process of losing someone is incredibly hard. You know, we want answers. We want to know that our loved one is in a better place. And so Jesus spoke up at we'll call it a funeral. He spoke up at a funeral to provide hope, perspective for those left behind. He let us in on the next chapter. He said, a person can have life even after they die, which is good news. And that's because they're connected with him. Death's not the final chapter. Once a person's journey here is over, they start a new journey. They enter the next life. And so it brings up questions about heaven, you know, and really answers about heaven. Heaven is open to all, but we can't just hope that we end up there because the good outweighs the bad. What is the key? How does a person get to heaven? Well, verse 25. Jesus told her, I'm the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live, even after dying. And so most people are confused about heaven. Being a good person doesn't cut it. Religion doesn't do it. Jesus taught that we cannot earn our way to heaven. It only comes through belief in Jesus, and each person needs to make a personal decision. The Bible is very clear about this. Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and life. No one gets to God except through me. And so the reality that we see here is that there is life beyond the grave. Physical death is not the final chapter. And what he teaches here is the kind of thing that we need. The kind of thing that helps when we have thoughts of death, when we have fears, when someone we love passes from this life into the next. We do not have to be afraid because Jesus has taken care of the details. And in this passage, we see that Jesus weeps over the loss of his friend. And then he did something that people would not forget. We're going to skip down to verse 38. Jesus was still angry as he arrived at the tomb. A cave was with a stone rolled across its entrance. Roll the stone aside, Jesus told her. But Martha, the dead man's sister, protested. Lord, he's been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible. Jesus responded, didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe? So they rolled the stone aside. Then Jesus looked up to heaven. Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me. But I said it out loud for the sake of these people standing here, so that they will believe you sent me. Jesus shouted, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave clothes, his face wrapped in a headcloth. Jesus told them, unwrap him and let him go. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. He performed a miracle. He told a dead man he was no longer allowed to be dead anymore. Who does that? Jesus does that. So it says in here that this was a sign to the people, that they would believe in him, that they believe that God sent him. And so many people, I know I would, like, wow, that's pretty awesome. I'm following this guy. That's what they did. They put their faith in Jesus. So I want to kind of focus in on a main point. This series is about miracles. It's about Jesus' power. Again, Jesus could do what other people couldn't. The main point is, you ready? Jesus has power over death. Jesus has power over death. Again, key verses, I'm going to read them again, verse 25 and 26. Jesus told her, I'm the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die. And so Jesus talked about his power over death, and then he performed a miracle to show that he does have the power over death. So Jesus has power over physical death, but he more so, better yet, he has power over spiritual death, that people don't have to die and be separated from him spiritually. So he said, there is life even after death. How is that possible? Well, Jesus is talking about the next life in heaven with him. Can you imagine someone saying, saying to you, when you die, I've got you covered. I will take care of everything, and I will make sure that you are in a better place. Just believe in me. That would be tough. Like, who would say something like that? I wouldn't say something like that. Jesus said that. Bold words, but he could back them up. If you've never placed your faith in Jesus, I would encourage you to consider it. Consider the words of Jesus. We do not have to be afraid because of Jesus. He has us covered. No matter what's going on in the world around us, all the crazy things that seem to have caught our attention, here's what you need to know. That God is bigger, he is stronger, and he is more powerful. His promises are true, so do not be afraid. Jesus is in control.